Hello and welcome back. In this chapter, we'll have a look at standard lighting in Blender. Now, I've included a .blend file called Lighting1 that you can use for this tutorial. In it, you'll find a plane and a simple sculpture, both with simple materials applied. In the World Editor, I've added a blended sky background. You may note I've removed the default lamp to start. Alright, let's go ahead and render. Now immediately we see our background render, but without a light source in our scene renders only in silhouette. Alright, let's go back with hitting F11, and in my top view, numpad 7, I will hit Control A and I will add a lamp, point lamp. I'll move it towards the corner, and in my side view, numpad 3, I'll raise it to the height of my camera. Let's render again. Now point lamps are omnidirectional, which means they cast light in all directions from whatever their location point is. If we exit the render and deselect the lamp, we can see that it displays in our editor as a small dot with a dotted circle around it. That'll become important later. Now I'll select the lamp and go to the Object Data icon in the Properties editor, which displays all of the point lamp controls. Now most of these controls are common to all Blender lamps. The preview shows a general look at the lamp output, which is currently a soft weak output that fades to black over distance. The directional effect of the point lamp is relative to its location within the scene. The intensity effect is relative to the distance of the lamp to relative objects also in the scene. Alright, in top view, I'll move the lamp to the opposite corner, but a little bit closer to the sculpture, and then go ahead and hit F12 to render again. We can see the effect of direction and distance on the render. I'll hit F11 to go back, and I'll move the lamp back to its previous position. In the lamp panel, there are buttons that allow our lamp object to be changed to any of Blender's 5 available lamp types. And note the changes as you select them in the preview. We have a sun lamp, a spot lamp, a hemi lamp, and an area lamp, which we'll cover in additional videos. For now, let's go back to our point lamp. Below that is the lamp color swatch, which is white by default. By changing the color, we can reflect the time of day or the surrounding environment, as natural light is seldom pure white. Let's click on our swatch and lower our red to about 30% and our green to about 50%, and come up with a nice cool blue color. And then let's go ahead and render. The lamp gives our render a decidedly cool feeling, but also note that as our orange plane has very little blue in its material, it tends to seem kind of gray and washed out and becomes less predominant. As our background sky and our sculpture are both predominantly blue, they are both enhanced by the lamp and tend to pop out. These are important considerations when you're deciding on lighting for your scene. Alright, let's set our color back to white and move on. Below our color swatch is an energy setting, defaulting to 1. We can decrease or increase that setting, allowing us to change the intensity as well as the intensity over distance of our lamp. Let's set our energy level to 3 and re-render the scene. Note that the scene is considerably brighter. Let's return our energy to 1. Below our energy setting is our Falloff. This is the distance, measured in Blender units, at which the light will be 1/2 of its original intensity. The default setting is 25 Blender units. Decreasing this number will cause objects to be dimmer because the light falls off faster. Increasing it will cause objects to be brighter because the fall-off is slowed over the same distance. The default equation used is an inverse square equation, allowing for fairly rapid fall off of light. We can choose from several equation types, and I encourage you to play around with all of them. One of the more useful types is the custom fall off. If we select custom, a panel called fall off curve appears. We can click on the fall off line and create control points. I'll create a single control point and create a very drastic fall off. Let's try and render that. You'll see we get a result where the light maintains its intensity to a point and then very rapidly disappears. I'll add a second control point, and I'll create a fall off that is initially drastic like the first time, but then falls off slowly at the end. Let's render again. Note the strong change of intensity between the control points. This should demonstrate the usefulness of using the custom setting to get specific and sometimes intentionally unrealistic results. Let's return our lamp to the center, low above the base of the sculpture. I'll also change the fall-off type back to inverse square. Now, down in our unit of measurement, let's change our blender units down to 2 and try rendering again. Our fall-off begins much more drastically, cutting to half at just 2 blender units away from our lamp. Below our distance is a sphere checkbox. Now this is also controlled by our distance setting. However, rather than creating a point at which fall-off begins, checking the sphere checkbox creates a blackout point instead. No light will be allowed to escape its influence. Let's go ahead and check that and render for the result so we can see what that looks like. Okay, great. I'll hit F11 and get back out of my renders. Let's return our distance to 25, the default, and uncheck our sphere box. I'll also move the lamp back to its corner position. On the right side of the panel are 4 checkboxes. Diffuse and specular are checked by default, meaning the lamp will affect the diffuse and specular settings of our object's materials. This layer only means the lamp will affect objects on the same render layer that the lamp itself is on. And lastly, negative does exactly what you might guess. It makes our lamp settings all negative, effectively emitting darkness rather than light. If we check that and hit F12, we can see that no light is being emitted. It doesn't really show us what's going on though, since that was the only light in our scene. However, if we add another point light in the opposite corner, we can see the effect more clearly. I'll move my negative lamp back to its previous corner. I'll then add another point lamp and move it towards the opposite corner. In my side view, I'll make sure both lamps are raised to camera height. Let's render. Now we can see the positive and negative effect clearly. Again, not necessarily realistic, but often useful to create a solid artistic effect. I'll delete the new lamp, and I'll uncheck the negative setting on the original. Now, by default, when you create a lamp in Blender, shadows are inactive. Let's select Ray Shadows and go ahead and hit F12 to render. We now have shadows rendering within our scene. If we hit F11 and return to our scene, I'll deselect the lamp, and note that the lamp object now has 2 circles around it. This is a quick indication that shadows are enabled on this lamp. Since these are ray trace shadows, not only do we need to activate them in the lamp panel, but they also need to be activated in the render panel under shading. Now, this should be checked by default, but it is a great place to start if you're not getting shadows in your scene like you expected. Now, when we activate shadows, additional controls appear. The first and most obvious is a shadow color swatch, which defaults to black. Let's select that and go ahead and change it to blue and do another render. On our blue sculpture, we can see that the blue of the shadow is picked up pretty starkly. But the orange plane, which once again, the color orange has very little blue in it, appears to still have a black shadow. This is a good demonstration of how shadow color reacts. I'll go ahead and set that shadow color back to black. Below that is the type of sampling. Now we won't go too far into this right now. Both types are very good. At the end of the day, basically, adaptive is faster, while constant produces a little bit less noisy result. Play around on your own a bit with samples and soft sives, and just observe the results. Lastly, our point lamp can also have a texture applied to it. Now with the lamp selected, I'll click on the texture icon and go ahead and create a new texture. I'll select clouds as the texture type. I'll select hard as the cloud type. Then I'll scroll down and change the influence color sample to black. Alright, let's go ahead and render. We can see the dapple effect created by the lamp texture. Adding texture can be a great way to simulate effects of lighting interacting off screen, such as passing through tree leaves and things like that. Alright, that should give us a pretty good overview of point lamps. I'll see you in the next video.